Welcome to Doc's Daily Dose for Dads, prescribed by Dr. Harrison. I got something really cool for you today. You really got to listen to the kids. They're brutally honest and tell you the truth, and they have these moments of supreme wisdom that you just don't expect. So the other day, I guess my wife was making lunch for the kids, and she had made some chicken nuggets, but they got a little burnt, or like the toaster oven kind of caught on fire, but she said she tasted one and it seemed fine, so she packed it up. Now, when we picked the kids up from school, they were saying how they were starving and they hadn't eaten anything. And we were like, well, what about your lunch? And they're like, well, did you see the chicken nuggets? And like they pulled out their chicken nuggets and they just weren't edible. I don't know if it just changed over time before lunch. They just weren't edible. I wouldn't have ate that. But the school that they go to, they get a scholarship for lunch. So they have funds put in account for them to eat hot lunch through their cafeteria, which, quite frankly, is done by Green Apple Gourmet, and they eat better than I ever do at lunchtime. And so what we do is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they get to have hot lunch and we give them snacks. Tuesday and Thursday, we pack their lunch, right? So when my son was telling me at the house that I'm just really hungry, I started to tell him, and this is my oldest, my 8-year-old, I was like, well, why wouldn't you just go and get the hot lunch? And he's like, because you tell us if you pack us a lunch, then it's not hot lunch day, because we know we only have a little bit amount of money in the fund to be able to use. And I was like, yeah, but if you can't eat, you need to go and get hot lunch. If something happens, that's an exception. That's a special occasion, right? You need to be able to do it. And I was like, come on, man. Think, use your brain, And his response to me was, well, we are thinking, but we're kind of not, because we're just following the rules. Mind blown. It made me start thinking about the notion of rules. And this was actually a huge area of research interest for me in graduate schools, rule-governed behavior. Rules were initially put in place for survival factor and to keep things orderly. But as we saw the effectiveness of rules, we started to add rules to everything. Any concept you can think of, there were rules. We also have self-imposed rules, maybe even superstitious rules that we have that makes us do things or not do things. But most of the rules we have today, if they're not for survival or order, they're completely arbitrary. And the funny thing about it is, they're made up by someone no smarter than you or I. Yet we follow them like they are etched in stone. It just doesn't make sense. So you should think about reducing the amount of arbitrary rules you provide for your kids. Also for yourself personally. Why impose all of these rules upon yourself and limit what you can do? Now, you should keep the rules that keep people safe and things in order. So tell the kid, don't stick a metal thing into the socket. You'll get electrocuted, right? Or, make sure that we are getting our homework done after school so that way you guys can have more time to play. Okay? Those are ones for survival and for order. But these arbitrary rules, they're just not necessary. And part of the problem is our rules focus on don't do that. And we never talk about what to do. You can't just tell someone, don't do this, and expect them to know what to do to replace that. You got to teach them what to do. So instead of focusing your rules on don't, focus your rule on do this. And then reward the kid if they do that. Now, I'm not talking about giving them money all the time or gifts. What about a simple high five? What about a big hug? Some appreciation? I get kids who are willing to run through a brick wall for me on my football team because I will pull them to the side and tell them I recognize the effort they're putting in and how appreciative I am of that effort, and that I love having them on the team. That kid will run through a brick wall for me because I recognize and have given praise and reward for his behavior on what he was supposed to do. I wasn't constantly harping on, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. You can't just tell me what not to do. You got to tell me what to do. So if you start to eliminate some of those arbitrary rules and focus more on the do, a good example is those do rules become more general. It's something like the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated. That's just a good, solid do that thing rule. It's really good. And it encompasses so much that you don't have to have all the tiny, nitpicky, do not do this rules. Now, I will say this, though. It requires you to actually be proactive as a parent, because you have to teach the to-do. Punishing or providing some sort of harsh consequence for kids breaking the rule of don't do that is reactive. Here's an example of proactive versus reactive and you changing your behavior as a parent. I could be sitting and watching the game and I'm in it, and all three kids are running around, yelling and screaming and playing and having a ton of fun, but it's annoying me and it's getting really loud and it's interrupting my ability to watch the game in peace. And I hit pause and you go and yell at them, sit down, stop hitting your brother, stop running around. This isn't a jungle gym inside. Go outside. And you get all mad and pissed off. Now the kids are shrinking because they got yelled at. You feel kind of bad. You're also all flustered because you're angry. And then you go back to try to enjoy the game and you can't even enjoy it. And then what happens? 10 minutes later, they're back to running around, yelling and screaming, and you're back to pausing to yell. That's reactive. And that is, don't do that. Here's how you flip the script and go to proactive to a do that. Let's say I'm watching the game. I recognize that it's super quiet. Now, normally for most parents, that's a sign of, oh man, they've gotten into some shit. So I pause the game and I get up and I go look in their room and I peek around the door and all three of them are sitting there playing nicely together and quietly. All you have to do is say, hey, I really appreciate how well you guys are playing together. I really like that you guys are being nice to each other and you're having fun with each other and you're keeping the noise volume down, which is letting daddy watch the game, and you know how much I love watching the game. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Love you guys. And you go back and press play. They feel great. You get more of the to-do things. They continue to respond and behave the way you want them to because you've rewarded them with some very nice words for doing what they're supposed to do. You feel great as a parent, and then you get to continue watching the great game. It's not always about changing the kid's behavior. A majority of the time, it's about changing your behavior as a parent. Kids respond accordingly. They'll give you whatever you set up for them. So if all you ever do is yell and scream in reaction to things they're not supposed to do, well, then that's all you're going to get is more of the do not do things and more of the reactionary yelling. But if you can stop, check yourself, recognize when they're doing the things that they're supposed to, step away from what you're doing for 15 to 30 seconds to praise or reward them for the thing that they are doing right, guess what you get? More of the good, do the right thing stuff. They know how happy it makes daddy. They feel great because daddy showed love and expressed appreciation. And so they continue to do more of that. If you continue to place all of these arbitrary rules and these do not do rules on these kids, and you remain reactionary, and all of your consequences are these harsh things, and you have so many rules overwhelming this child who's also navigating through a world creating self-imposed rules, the overuse of rules will kill common sense. So use some of yours to help guide your kid. That's Doc's Daily Dose for Dads today. Make sure to hashtag docsdailydosefordads or hashtag 4D. Check out all of our social media at rebirthbx. Hit the website, rebirthbx.com. You can catch this in podcast form on audio when you're driving on Apple Podcasts or Google Play Music or on the website. I'll be back at you tomorrow with some more great advice. And remember, this all came from me simply listening to what my kid had to say when I gave him a smart-ass remark of use your head.